So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us for this lightning talk session. I'm going to let you all introduce yourselves as we go. We've got 10 minutes per presentation, so I'll make sure I keep a timer for you and give you a warning when you've got 1 minute left. So I'm going to hand it over to Cassie Short to start us off.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll just share my screen with you guys. Yeah, okay, great. So yeah, I'm Cassie. I'm a postdoc in the psychology department at the University of Oldenburg in Germany. And I'm also part of the Open Science interest group that we have in the department. And it's really a pleasure actually today to be able to present this grassroots initiative with you guys, kind of discuss with you a little bit how we go about this, sharing our open science enthusiasm with the department and with our students. And perhaps you have some feedback for us. And if there's no time at the end, then please, we'll be very happy if you reach out to us and get in touch. So I'll make a start. Yeah, so who are we? We are a group of volunteers of postdocs and PhD students. And we consider ourselves a grassroots initiative because we're established without funding, and instead just our love of open science brings us together. However, we do, I should mention, have a lot of support from the professors in our department, so we're not totally on our own. And what we do, our mission is basically to create an awareness of, encourage engagement with, and facilitate implementation of open science practices at every level of the scientific career. So this is going from, we have master students in our department implementing this into their education and their work, all the way up to the PhD students, the postdocs, and also the professors of the department. And I'd like to give you some examples of how we do this. So to create awareness, we do this in two ways. First of all, knowledge collection is very important. So to do this, we try to find out about open science events that are happening. And we get together, we share this information, and we see if hopefully one or two people from our group can attend and continue to learn about the open science landscape. And we also share the latest open science publications with each other, just to make sure that we're still fully informed of what's happening. And then, of course, we share this knowledge with the department. And some ways we do this are an open science series. So we have a department-wide colloquium that all the staff and the students are invited to attend, and it's quite well attended. And we have usually 2 to 3 slots per semester dedicated to the open science group, where we can invite speakers from open science enthusiasts or experts to come and speak with us and share their knowledge and their expertise, and really just encourage engagement and enthusiasm for the open science practices. Also, we engage a lot with the professors about their curriculum input when it comes to open science. So we like to make sure that if there's anything that isn't covered in the curriculum, then we can try to cover this within our open science series, and also where we can within our teaching as well. Because as volunteers, we also are engaged in teaching activities in the department. So for example, pre-registration, if this isn't included in the curriculum in any way, and we think this can be helpful for the students for their master thesis, for example, and many of them say they would like to have a scientific career, then we will make sure that we will teach pre-registration in their practical projects, for instance. And also, we also give regular workshops. So we actually had one today on containerization. It's the evening here for us now in Germany. And this was a full day workshop that was in collaboration with a device center that we have at the university for tools for open and reproducible science. And we collaborated and got together, and we were able to offer this containerization workshop, which was attended by the students and the staff for reproducible code sharing. We like to encourage engagement with open science as well. We don't just want to tell people this is what you can do. We want to really encourage people to be involved within our group, and also to engage in open science practices in their studies and in their work. And to do this, we have to be visible as a support center within the department. And the ways we go about this are we have a newsletter, a quarterly newsletter, and we share information on the open science work that we do as an initiative, open science work of other people in the department. So if somebody's published open access, somebody's made their code available or is sharing data, then this goes into the newsletter. And we also share just general open science news with people as well. Just so they can see that this is, where the field is going, and hopefully, encourage some enthusiasm and engagement. We also make it very clear that the meetings are open to all, so that's students all the way up to professors. It's not just for PhD students and postdocs. We have a very active mailing list where we encourage people to get in touch with us if they need any support. And we find that some people actually do kind of contact us if they need any help with anything, or if they they have some specific questions, they want to pre-register a study, but they're just not sure on something that they need to select, then they can come to us and we can talk them through the procedure. And also we've created this commitment to research transparency. So we would like the members of the department to openly share where they can their data, their code, pre-register the studies, publish open access if possible. And we have quite many members of the department who have signed this commitment. And also we have knowledge collection from the department to us. So I think to encourage engagement, we really need to know, what people need from us. So we have an annual survey where we ask people, are you aware of us and what we do? Is there anything that we could be doing that we're currently not doing? How can we improve to support you? And we're also hosting an early career researcher open science survey at the moment, where it's an international survey where we want to, on a broader scale, collect the experiences, the fears, the barriers that people are feeling to engaging with open science practices, so that we can disseminate this information, but also use this to inform our own work and hopefully be a little bit more impactful. And then thirdly and finally, we want to facilitate the implementation. So we want to share and educate on open science practices. We want to get people enthusiastic, but then we also want people to put this into practice if possible. So to do this, we're currently working on a department-wide data sharing consent form for brain data. So we hope that this will make it much easier and reduce the barriers for people to share the data, the brain data that they have, without feeling like there's something missing from the consent form that may restrict them from doing this. And also we're putting together some code sharing guidelines. So this is like a practical guidance for how people can write reproducible code and share it. And again, the knowledge collection also feeds into this. So to facilitate the implementation, obviously we need to know what's still missing. So again, the knowledge collection helps here. Okay, so what helps within the OSIG, we're very inclusive and flexible in terms of our participation. So we have these regular structured meetings, which are every 2 weeks. And it's okay, to be a member of OSIG if you can't attend every meeting, for example. And it's okay to attend if you're a student. It's okay to attend if you're a professor. So there's not, the level of commitment doesn't seem so high. So we kind of reduce the barrier to just make that first step and get involved. I think we also, this encourages people to continue to be a part of it, because, it's people get busier at certain times of the year, certain times of the semester. And I think it's nice to have, to know and have the freedom to be able to duck in and out as and when you can and just do what you can. And we also keep this to small projects with interested leads. So each project will have maybe 2 or 3 people working on it, such as the brain sharing, the data sharing consent form for brain data. And we have people working on this who are genuinely interested in wanting to share the data. So the projects tend to be fulfilled because the people who it's self-selecting to the project, so the people working on it are genuinely people who are passionate about that specific area. Same with the newsletter. The people in charge of the newsletter, or the particular person who's in charge of the newsletter, is very passionate about sharing what we do and sharing the open science news and achievements of the department with everybody, to make everybody aware. So this is also a very nice project that's been long lasting now for, I think, 2 or 3 years. We try to keep it sustainable. And then outside of the OSIG, we also communicate a lot with other initiatives around the department. So we mentioned our device center, and also research training groups who tend to have quite a lot of resources or funding. We work together and we say, we're happy to to educate and get involved and share our knowledge with you if you can fund, for example, the workshop, the speaker to come. And this seems to work pretty well. And I think that's because we have the support of the professors, and also it aligns with the university values. And you can see this in the photograph here. My colleague has drawn a big arrow to the Open Science certificate that we received, but we won the university's Open Science Prize, which was a really nice boost for motivation and also for our visibility as well for the department.
Got 1 minute left.
Okay, great. I'm almost done. So then just coming to the end, the two main obstacles that we've faced really, if anybody else is interested in starting an initiative like this, was having no funding, being a group of volunteers. But I think we've overcome this by having a small and sustainable group of really engaged volunteers. We focus most of our efforts on things that we can do for free. We apply for funding where we can, and we collaborate with other university initiatives that do have funding. And another barrier is the recruitment and engagement of our volunteers. And we think that this is quite high, our level of engagement with the volunteers, because we're very flexible in terms of what we expect and the commitment. We've built quite a community spirit. We engage in group work, so nobody's left on their own with one project, feeling isolated with the responsibility. We're very open in terms of having hybrid meetings, and we keep an up-to-date wiki page. So if anybody's missed a couple of meetings, they can catch up with what we've done. So if you're interested in maybe giving us some feedback, or getting, collaborating in some way, then we have a website, which you see here, and I will also share the slides on OSF. And yeah, you will also find on the slides 3 different email addresses where you can contact us. And thank you. It's been great.
Thank you so much, Cassie. I just want to say that we'll move directly on to the next Flash Talk, but we are the last session of the day. So if you want to linger a few minutes afterwards, hopefully our presenters will be happy to answer any questions at that point. So I'm now going to hand it over to Jean-Philippe Gaudin for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. So just going to share slideshow.
Perfect.
Okay, so thank you for organizing this meeting here. So first of all, I want to start with acknowledgement. So of course, OSF Foundation, my chemistry department at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, Oregon, and the MJ Murdoch Charitable Foundation, who gave me some startup fund to start this particular project. So we know that scientific information can be hidden in silos because of different reasons. We can have inaccessibility to journals because of paywalls. We have also people who are not aware of open databases that exist. We have issue with the lack of interoperability between certain databases. We have lack of transparency. We have lack of access to unpublished data that stays in labs also. So it has been estimated about 28 billion per year is being lost in irreproducible biology research, particularly. And I'm going to talk about lack of transparency and lack of access of unpublished data, particularly. And I'm going to illustrate with some example and get to the core of what I want to develop here at Lewis and Clark College. So we know we have fraud that happened also. And I want just to illustrate what happened recently with some fraud that happened in the US with some falsified data, to a point that now Science magazine is using a software to make sure that images are well and are not fake. So this is a new initiative that was launched by Science magazine. And you have also a Retraction Watch, a PubPeer, where we have a lot of whistleblowers who have been used this website to talk about issue that they have with falsified data. Sometimes we can have issue with data interpretation. And I'm just going to give you an example here with this paper that was published in Nature in 2017, where those authors stated that using ancient DNA, they find out that ancient Egyptians are more ancestry with Near Easterners. But if we look carefully at the data, the sample is not representative. We have only 3 full genomes. Historically, it's only about the end. geographically, there was only one city that was sampled, and sociologically, we don't know. So I wrote a rebuttal with some colleague of mine that was published in OSF initially, and then in an Egyptology magazine talking about this. But I just want to emphasize, when science is not done properly, we can have people citing those scientific articles and using them in a racist viewpoint. So some people are still using this article to trying to claim that Black people have a lower IQ than white people. So that can be really dangerous. The last part I want to emphasize, and this is like the meat, the core of what I want to talk about, is about data availability. So in 2018, a group in Japan has reported a publication related to glycoprotein interacting with a particular protein called galectin. And they have shown that these particular protein that contains polylactosamine, which is a type of sugar, and they claim that the method using galectin might not be working because of the length of this polylactosamine. And when I was finishing my postdoc at Emory University, I published a small paper showing that I've used indeed this method, and I found those receptors. And the problem is, part of my data was not published in a full journal, and some of the data were kept in some databases related to proteomics. So we have a lack of access of unpublished data that can be also an issue with this. And if I compare the strategy that was used here, so from this group in Japan, they've used the same cell line with that contained polylactosamine. They did a peptide purification, then they did mass spectrometry and glycoprotein identification. In my case, I used this galectin that binds to those sugars and did the same work after peptide isolation and mass spectrometry for glycoprotein identification. So if I compare our data, these that were published in a journal that is silo in a paywall, and mine that was unpublished and open and published in an open source database, we have 146 against 515 protein identified. But after data cleaning and removing contaminant, 48% of those protein were exactly the same. So using the same line, different method, we have almost half of identical membrane protein. So my method was efficient, but we have a lack of communication. So how can we bridge this issue here of knowledge? So that's what I want to do. Spoiler alert, it was in my title. I want to build a replicability community in biochemistry. So what I want to do ever since I was hired at Lewis and Clark College, we can use the teaching classes in biochemistry and use research. So I want to create a repertoire of ligand for galectins using both published papers and proteomics databases, independently have students reproducing those data in labs, and have our collaborators, either single-blinded or double-blinded, double-checking on the students' result. And number 3, I want to compare those results generated with my students with the repertoire that was generated from the data curation, and then develop some reproducibility metrics, such as the Jacquard similarity. So there are a lot of benefits, and I know I'm preaching to the choir here in terms of pedagogy to teach reproducible research, to use data science for curation, to teach biochemistry techniques, but also in terms of replicability of research, we can increase the sample size with students, increase the network with scientists who work in similar projects, and share with the community with open science project. So if you're interested in building with me this replicability community in biochemistry, you can join me. This is a QR code, and this is bit.ly, replic-biochem.py. So if you're undergraduate teaching biochemistry, interested in glycoprotein, mass spectrometry, if you're a librarian, if you're involved in open data, in data science, if you're a statistician, you might be interested in this project where we can enhance the reproducibility of science in biochemistry. Thank you. That's all that I have for you.
That was excellent. Thank you very much, Jean-Philippe. Really interesting work. Right, okay, I'm going to pass it over to our first Lucas Woolrich.
Thank you very much.
can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, then I still need to get my slides to work. Just a second. Okay, here we are. All right. Can you see the slides?
Yes.
That's excellent. Okay, so yeah, I'm Lucas Walrich. I'm an organizational psychologist based at the Birkbeck Business School in London. But the project I'm talking about here is an international collaboration that's part of FORD, which is an interdisciplinary and international community of early career scholars that aim to support open science teaching, but also meta science, to make open science methods more available. What we are doing in this project is to try to mainstream the use of replications. You might have noticed that this presentation and the next presentation by another Lucas are quite closely related. We also noticed that.
We can hear.
Yes, we've lost your sound again, Lucas.
Can you
That's
hear me
it.
now?
Yes, you're back now. Yeah.
Okay, let's hope it stays that way. I just need to get the slides back. Okay. So yeah, what we're trying to do in this project is to mainstream the use of replications. And I'm sure you all know that replications are slowly but increasingly happening, particularly accelerated by a couple of these large-scale, okay, I don't like that face.
I'm sorry, Lucas, we're having trouble with your audio again. We could still hear you, but it was very quiet.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, I can't hear you, which is unfortunate.
Oh.
Okay, good. Okay, so yes, in a situation where replications are happening more and more, important because these large-scale projects have shown across fields that we really need replications, but more importantly, we need to see these replications. And even these very prominent projects haven't quite achieved the visibility and the impact that seems really important, let alone individual replications that often go unpublished or unnoticed. Which is unfortunate because replication is really a cornerstone of science for obvious reasons. This is one of the early pieces that I came across that argues this, but it's obviously not a new idea, but one that has somewhat fallen out of fashion. So I claimed that replications lack influence. And I think by now that's fairly well established. So these two articles nominally come to contradictory conclusions, one saying replication failures don't affect citation rates, the other one saying they do, but whether citations of failed replication of the papers that failed replications decrease by 7% or by 14%, I would argue either is not good enough, particularly given that very few of these papers that keep on citing sources that failed replication don't refer to the replication failure at all. I would expect that the situation is even worse in education, where effects that fail replication are likely to be promoted nonetheless. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any data on that. But there is data on non-replicable publications being more exciting and thus more cited in the literature. So why does this matter? I think it's fairly obvious that it matters for different groups of stakeholders. it really matters for particularly early career scholars who enter a research field and might just not know if there are any findings that are trustworthy and worth building on. But also it matters for early career scholars and others who might want to conduct replications, because it leads to a situation where it might just not be worth doing that. It matters for educators because we do not want to teach things that are not replicable, that are not true, but it's very difficult to do that. My experience in teaching social psychology has been quite painful, because you either need to track down every single citation for quite a long time, or you just risk promoting nihilism, saying, well, this is what I'm supposed to teach, but I have no idea if that is true. So they would also be really important to make it easier to find and digest replications. Something very similar applies to policy advisors and funders who obviously want to build on replicable findings, but currently that is very difficult to assess. And finally, for meta-science, it's a problem that replications aren't easily findable or can't be aggregated very easily, because it seems to make many of the discussions about how replications are done very impressionistic, or maybe exclusively focused on the large-scale projects. And these discussions are important. Obviously, replications need to be done faithfully, and there is a continuing backlash in many fields against the practice of replications. And to address that, it would be very helpful to have a better view on what is actually done and what the outcomes are. So with that in mind, in Ford, we started a project called Replications and Reversals about 2 years ago. It started with teaching in mind, and so it started from effects that people found relevant, and then basically went to investigate the replicability, or rather, whether replications had been done on those effects. We ran various hackathons, more than 100 contributors, contributed 800 effects, and basically wrote qualitative summaries. This is heat priming. These are the references to replication attempts. These are the replication results. And this crowdsourcing approach brought a lot of energy and diversity of perspectives, but then also some quality concerns. When we started to think about how to turn this into something also relevant for meta-science, we came in touch with Lukas Rösler, who's going to talk afterwards, who had started to build a replication database in a more systematic approach, starting from the large-scale replication efforts and turning them into a unified data structure ready for aggregation. We figured out that these two approaches are actually quite complementary, that we're working to address different audiences, that we should join forces to do so more effectively. So at the moment, we're aggregating these data sets into a total data set. We will currently have about 1,500 replication effects, and we're building various interfaces for the stakeholder groups that are already highlighted. So one thing we do want to enable people to do with replications is to aggregate them. In the Shiny app that's already available, that I encourage you to have a look at if you're interested, we can basically search for replications in specific areas, see what has been done, and what this overall picture is. And we're in the process of building that out to look more at predictors of replicability. The second aspect is to enable annotation of reading lists, which can be very powerful for teaching, but possibly also for early stage research when there's a literature review with some references, to basically figure out what's the state of these references. Have they been replicated? Do they replicate? And then finally, we'll keep on generating these summaries that came out of the original Ford project that are based on effects, where in this case, God priming does not replicate, so that will be transparently visible on the Ford website. So with that, I'm out of time. This is our current core team. We're very grateful for the support of about 100 contributors to each of the original projects, and grateful for funding by the NWO, by the Dutch National Science Foundation. We're always open for collaboration. So I really like the idea of continuing the conversation after this, but these are also various ways of contacting us. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Lukas. And so over to the to your colleague, Lucas Rusella. The floor is yours.
Right, thank you. You should be able
Yep,
to
we can
see
see
my
you.
screen, and I hope you can also hear me well.
Yep, we can hear you.
Apologies about my voice. It was gone for quite a while. I just got it back. I hope it will last the 10 minutes, but I'm optimistic. So this is also a Ford project. And after Lukas Wallrich talked about the past and the present of the replication research that we are doing, I'm excited to share with you our vision and what is to come and what we are currently working at. So also looking at Abel Brodeur's talk later, I just want to clarify that the replications that Lukas and I, the other Lukas, are talking about, we mean studies that test the same hypothesis as the previous study, but with new data, or with different data. In contrast to reproductions, where the same data and the same analysis script or another analysis script is used. So what we are currently creating is the Ford Replication Hub, of which the replication database is a part of. I'm going into detail on that in a minute. And for the Replication Hub, we wanted to become an open and collaborative interdisciplinary nexus for replication research. So you may have noticed that replications are becoming more common. For example, I have a literature alert. It pops up every week, and it gets more and more studies. Currently, it's about 10 studies per week from all different fields. And of course, many in psychology and related social sciences, but also beyond that. And you can also calculate the proportion of all studies from specific fields or journals for which there are public replication attempts. And these numbers are very, very low. We are talking about less than 5%, often even below 1%. For example, Clark and colleagues, they have 0.2% for top-ranking journals. And we can also take a look at the data entered in the replication database and see that the studies that have been subject to replication attempts come from very recent. The publication years of replication attempts are very recent. So here you also have these peaks. These are due to many labs and similar studies. So replications are becoming more common. And it's not just conducting replication studies, but it's not only the primary replication research, but also discussions and theories about what replications are, what they are supposed to look like, and also gold standards about how to conduct replication research. And so there's a growing number of methodological guidelines, and with all these new studies and all these discussions, it's very difficult to keep track, and it's very overwhelming. So I argue that this is not a pile or a mountain of replication research, but this is a first wave of findings and discussions that is coming at us. And researchers and students are wondering about these gold standards, how to conduct replication research. And then we have thousands of replications out there, some in journals and some part of large-scale projects where they publish 100 replications at once. We have preprints, we have the OSF registries that you can browse, or even data registries, or even only OSF projects that are public and that you can find in literature searches. But it's difficult to find out whether something has or has not been subject to a replication attempt. And also with many journals being reluctant to publish replication findings, we need to find other ways to disseminate our findings and materials. So yes, it's not just about findings, but also about creating materials that others can use. And if you ever designed a replication study, you may have noticed that recreating the materials can be quite overwhelming, and can be a worthy research product in itself. So to ride along with the analogy, we at Ford have been asking ourselves how to surf on this wave of replication research and discussions. And although it may seem difficult, I believe that it can be quite fun. So this is where the Replication Hub comes in. And as with most Ford project, this is a collaborative project with about 150 people from all different countries. And this would not have been possible without volunteers and collaborative efforts. So these are the needs of replication researchers that I already mentioned. And the Replication Hub revolves around these three needs that I just pointed out, and I'm going over. So first, we need to find replications, and therefore, as part of Replication Hub, we have the replication database and the references annotator that is currently being worked on. We have the replications and reversals legacy project that is being converted right now. And we also have a living list of large-scale replication projects that you can see here on the left that we are maintaining and that will be updated. As for conducting replication research, this fits well with Ford's core mission, which is about training. So it's obvious that we are interested in creating and sharing materials on how to conduct replication studies. And what we are doing is that we are currently coordinating with people who are experienced in conducting replications and want to create materials that can help students and other researchers. So this starts with defining what a replication is, choosing the replication study, choosing a pre-registration template, and contacting authors. For example, we provide templates where you can ask authors for their materials or for a comment on the replication finding. So this is something where we try to gather everything from that list of guidelines that I just showed you. And then, and finally, as the third point, we have publishing or disseminating replications. And you can disseminate them via the replication database. Of course, people need to be aware of the database and use it. We have a template that you can use to report replications that can save you some time, and that is very standardized, which is a standardized replication template, as you can see on the left. And we want to engage in post-publication peer review with a project where we want to comment on all studies for which there are replication attempts. We are maintaining a list of replication-friendly journals, and as the biggest point that is currently in the planning phase, we are planning to create a diamond open access, researcher-led, interdisciplinary, and university-hosted journal for replication studies that makes use of the templates and that will be synchronized with a replication database. And obviously, this will be replication-friendly. So what's our vision for the Replication Hub? The hub is the center of the wheel of replication research with all these parts linked and intertwined. For example, we will continue to add large-scale projects and reports to the database, and the journal will make use of the reporting templates and keep updating the guide. And over time, the guide will also evolve to inform editorial decisions for the replication journals or what for the templates, what they are supposed to look like. So yeah, this is our vision, and we invite everybody to join the discussion and collaborate with us on this. This is a largely overlapping core team with replication database, unsurprisingly. And I think that's it with my voice. Thank you very much. Yeah, feel free to contact us anytime. Ford is a very open and collaborative community that I personally am very happy to be part of. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucas. And I'm glad that your voice held up, and I hope you get better soon.
Thanks.
So we're on to our final talk now by Stavrula Costa and Abel Roda.
Hello, thank you. It's the last talk, so I'll try to keep it brief. I'm Stavrula Costa, Chief Editor of Nature Human Behavior, and I'm joined by Abel Broder, who is the founder and chair of the Institute for Replication at the University of Ottawa. And I'll be talking about our partnership, the partnership between Nature Human Behavior and the Institute for Replication, in order to reproduce and or replicate papers published in the journal at scale. So Lucas and Lucas did a wonderful job talking about why replication is important in science for all stakeholders involved. Reproduction is equally important. It allows us to correct the record because using the same code and data to see whether the published findings do actually reproduce is quite important. And both replication and reproduction enable us to enhance the reliability of the scientific literature and allow science to self-correct and build cumulatively. But as Lucas and Lucas said, replication and reproduction are not yet part of the mainstream in a major way. Just one additional piece of information to what Lucas and Lucas talked about. I went into the Top Factor website and I tried to see how many journals indexed by Top Factor encourage replications, and it's only 7.8%. We also know there are several papers from several fields that replication studies are a very, very small proportion of the total number of papers published. So even if authors, scientists carry them out, it may be very hard to publish those. And this is something that we need to change. A little bit about the journal. Nature Human Behavior is a multidisciplinary journal. We publish research from across the natural and social sciences on human behavior. The journal is highly selective and highly visible. And since launch, we have been committed to promoting rigor and robustness in science. This is a key reason why we partnered with the Institute for Replication. We support open science practices, and we select research for publication not based on the results, but on the basis of the importance of the research question and how substantive the evidence is. That's the reason why we publish registered reports, for example. And we have also been publishing replication studies from the outset. The Institute for Replication, and Abel can also weigh in here if I get anything wrong, Abel, works to improve the credibility of science by reproducing and replicating research findings in leading academic journals. The Institute works with the scientific community to carry out or facilitate carrying out reproductions and replications. It also offers replication resources as well as teaching resources. And the Institute also contributes to the dissemination of outputs of these efforts. The Institute was founded in 2022 and it has had an impressive output, hundreds of papers reproduced and replicated. And what we are aiming to do in the context of this partnership is do the same type of work at scale in the context of articles published in Nature Human Behavior, focusing on our most recently published papers from January 2023 onwards as we're publishing papers. We made an open call earlier this year in January, calling for replicators or reproducers to step forward and reproduce or replicate our papers. The Institute for Replication is also organizing replication events. These are typically one-day events where participants work in groups of 3 to 5 to reproduce using the same code and data the findings of a published paper, or carry out robustness checks, so different analytical procedures to replicate the findings of the original paper. The Institute also has an editorial board who act as ambassadors and also help organize replication games. To be clear, in the context of this partnership, nature-human behavior is not involved in the reproductions or the replications. We have no role in selecting the papers or in how the replications are carried out, the reproductions are carried out. This is entirely the domain of the Institute for Replication. Our role is to facilitate, where necessary, code and data sharing according to the availability statements in the papers we publish. And Abel tells me that there are 64 ongoing replications or reproductions. A further four have already been completed and sent to the original authors for a response. The Institute has held 4 replication games this year and also intend to hold a further 21 through to the end of the year. And everybody is welcome to contact the Institute in order to participate. A key aspect of this collaboration is that we are committed to publishing outputs from this effort. First of all, a meta-research paper based on replications and or reproductions completed during the first 18 months of the project. We will also be considering for publication standalone replication efforts that involve new data and represent an advance in evidence over the paper we published, as well as commentaries in the form of matters arising that report individual efforts, replication or reproduction efforts that challenge or clarify the work we've published. So why are we partnering? Again, the question of how do you effect culture change, I believe that joining forces among stakeholders is fundamental. So by joining forces between the journal and the Institute, we have broader reach. We were able to issue a press release announcing the initiative, the collaboration. We featured an editorial, and Abel and other directors of the Institute wrote a correspondence, so we could create a broader amplified voice supporting reproductions and replications. The initiative also offers stronger incentives for scientists to participate in these efforts, because we are committed to publishing outputs from this partnership. And we're also taking a coordinated approach to sharing of the data and code of the original papers. Sometimes efforts to reproduce or replicate previous research are hampered by the fact that unless the data or code have already been made public, authors sometimes are not cooperative. And this is not an option when the journal is involved as well, because we can enforce compliance with the sharing according to data availability and code availability statements. So hopefully this initiative will help elevate the visibility, amplify the visibility of reproduction and replication efforts, and also encourage our authors and others in the community to make sure that they are prepared to share their data and code and for their work to be subjected to reproduction and replication efforts in the future as part of a norm rather than an exception. So if anybody is interested in participating, please contact the Institute for Replication. And with that, thank you so much for listening, and I'll hand back to our chair, Leslie.
Thank you very much, Sabrina. That was fascinating and a great end to this session. As I said, we are at time, but we are also the last session. So if anybody wants to hang around in this room for a bit and chat, then obviously feel very free to do that. I do also appreciate that some of you, it's probably heading towards bedtime if you're coming from Europe. So thank you very much to everybody.
Thank you.
So we have one question in the chat. Is
Yeah.
are prepared to do similar work in the natural sciences?
That's a good question. I think, you know, some of the challenges in social sciences are very different than natural sciences. I guess within the next couple of months, we're more thinking of public health, epidemiology. There's also quite a lot of demand for, you know, other discipline within a social science, criminology, sociology in general. I think it's building an infrastructure, building, you know, enough partnerships to be able to do this in the natural sciences. I think within natural sciences, I think there are some fields that would be incredibly hard to reproduce or replicate, to be frank. But I think at the end of the day, it's just a question of willingness by the editors to, you know, to get this done. I mean, you know, this was an amazing presentation, the easiest presentation I've ever done in my life, because I didn't need to even step up or clarify anything. Thanks to you, Stavrola. But I think it makes a huge difference when you collaborate with journals. So we have many collaborations with, you know, with NHB, Psych Science, etc. But we also do reproduce and replicate journals where we don't have a collaboration with the editors, and it's very different. It's much harder, but it is feasible. And hopefully in the future, we can also do natural sciences, but we'll see. Short answer is we'll see. Hopefully, yes, but in the short run, it's unfortunately not happening until maybe an editor steps up and a large group of researchers will be willing to do this. Sure, happy to.
Okay. Any last thoughts, or we'll wrap up?
Just a question for Stavrola, because of your ties with nature. So what I was trying to tell my student, in the future, the way to move forward would be like to have another index of like a replicability, similar to what we have in terms of like a citation index, for instance. So is nature thinking about this kind of idea, like in the future, not only having like how many times this paper has been cited, an H index and so on, but kind of like an index with work that have been reproduced, to just like say that also this paper is like highly reproducible. So that might give like some incentive to scientists to be more open.
That's a really good suggestion. We don't develop metrics ourselves, so we use a variety of metrics. We are signatories of DORA, so we don't prioritize. I almost never put the journal's impact factor on any presentation I give, and that's on purpose. We report a very broad range of metrics, including top factor, which to me matters a lot. But as an organization, we don't develop those metrics. However, Leslie, who is from COS, can probably take this feedback back to the organization. Most likely, it would need to come from other routes. So organizations would do work on the development of metrics. But that's a really, really good idea. I wish there was such a metric, actually. It would also require many, many more replication studies being published. to be able to have the metric.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
That's what my proposal in the biochemistry. What I'm trying to do is use the students in the teaching settings, and after a couple of years, and see based on binom what they have, and so we have like increase the n, but for sure, or like other study might be more complicated.
Yeah, no, and it's important, actually, it's important to start at the whole idea when the whole issue of the replication crisis came about. The term reproducibility was used, and at some point, reproducibility took a sort of backstage role, and replication became far more prominent. But I really believe that reproducibility has to be front and center as the first step. And replication has to then follow, because Abel can talk more about that. Sometimes it's shocking to see how many errors there are in the published literature. So actually just running the same data with the same code and seeing whether you are getting the same results is absolutely fundamental. And I don't believe there is sufficient emphasis on that.
Yeah, let me take on this. To me, anyone who's conducting a replication and spending thousands of dollars without doing computational reproducibility first is a fool. We're wasting a lot of money on replications when actually, when you just try to run the codes off and they don't run, there might be major coding errors. Getting just the materials and checking that the codes run, just that step might not even be working. You might not even be able to get the code. So to move ahead and recollect data and try to me, it's a second order. First order is reproducibility. Once you've done reproducibility and you think, okay, it is reproducible, let's actually spend a lot of money trying to replicate if we think it's worth it. Sorry, being an economist here, but just in terms of cost benefit, reproducibility is super cheap. And yet, so many studies fail. So many coding errors. So Institute for Replication, we're doing mostly reproducibility simply because of the cost, but also because you can do it large scale, and that's the first step before doing replication, in my opinion.
Rebecca has a question. So Rebecca, it's how should journals select what publications to subject to those additional efforts? For example, in peer review, I can tell you that the peer review system is on the verge of collapse because the volume of scientific production versus the volume of the scientific force are growing at very different paces. So there are way too many papers, and the number of active scientists is not increasing at pace, which means there is much more to peer review and far fewer people to do it. So it is not feasible. We are doing code peer review for papers that have original code, so papers that are computational in nature. What I mean original code is not running an SPSS analysis and R analysis, but a computational model that you authors provide all the material for us, and we do peer review. Already that is a small fraction of our papers, but it is very hard getting reviewers to actually run the code and reproduce the analysis. It's necessary for those papers because the main finding is the code, is the model. So that's the main scientific contribution. But I don't believe it's possible to do that at scale for every paper, and we are a selective journal. So it's easier for us because we're professional editors. I believe the system will collapse. However, if we require it of every paper, the issue of reproduction, though, can be addressed, hopefully, with technical advances. So hopefully, in a few years, we won't need to be running things on our own. For instance, CodeOcean, if you upload your codes on CodeOcean, it will do the computational check whether the code runs and whether it produces the same result automatically. So I'm hoping that with advances in technology, we will rely far less on peer review, and we should be reproducing every single published paper. So that should be 100%. Replication has to do with funds, with priorities, with a lot of other considerations, but reproduction should be 100%. My view, my 2 cents.
Yeah, I can just add to this. I agree. I think, at least for leading journals, you would think computational reproducibility should be something always done. Some journals cannot, I think, but you could make the point maybe there's too many journals. And if they're not even able to find referees and find, maybe these journals should step down. But I think in general, to me, the question is actually, how can you do mass reproducibility without actually targeting people? I think, having the community voting on what should be reproduced and replicated is a good thing. Impact factor could be something else that you could use, but having criteria that are objective is very important. I think one of the big problems we're seeing is people are targeting authors, and that's problematic. That's definitely not something we're doing at the Institute. We target journals, we target years, but we don't target people. And the goal is to change the norms. So I'm always a bit skeptical when someone reaches out to me and is like, hey, I want to replicate or reproduce this study. My first question is always, did you read our conflict of interest policy and why? And if it's only based on interest and methods and so on, and this fits within the journals that we have and years, I say yes. But if it's a specific targeting or we say no, we're really strict about this.
I didn't know, Abel. That's brilliant.
That is.
Yeah, I mean, original authors, I reach out to them. So each time there's a reproduction replication completed, I'm the messenger. And it turns out that the messenger gets, getting shot a lot. But we can always say, you were not targeted. We targeted the journal. We're mass reproducing. That has nothing to do with you. You published in that journal in that year. This helps a lot for them, at least for the authors, to know that they're not being targeted, that the replicators didn't target them. They chose a paper because they joined an event and they were offered only a small number of possibilities, that sort of thing. It helps a lot. At least for me in terms of communicating, but I think also for the original authors.
Yeah. Well, this has been a great additional discussion. So thank you very much, and especially to you, Stavroula, for fielding so many of those questions. And thank you very much to everybody, and very best of luck with all your research.
Thank you.
For joining
This was
us.
such an interesting
Thank
session.
you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.